The small village lies deep in a long-forgotten valley. There is an abandoned house that no one dares to go near. It is said that every full moon night, laughter mixed with mournful crying can be heard from that house. Anyone who enters cannot come out intact. Dung is a brave young man. Hearing the villagers' rumors, he decided to find out the truth. One night, he brought a flashlight, a small knife, and some salt, something that the village elders believe can ward off evil spirits. The old wooden door creaked open. The air inside was chillingly cold. Dung shined his flashlight, saw dust everywhere, and cobwebs covered the corners of the walls. He slowly walked in. Suddenly, the door behind him slammed shut with an unusual force, making Dung's heart pound. He took a deep breath and continued walking inside. Suddenly, a cold wind blew across his neck, carrying a whisper, "Go, or you will never come out." Dung swallowed his saliva, deciding to go to the middle room. When the door opened, he was stunned. In the middle of the dusty room was an old wooden chair, on which was a blurry figure. It was a girl with long, disheveled hair, a pale face, and empty eyes staring at him. "What are you doing here?" The voice rang out, cold to the point of being creepy. Dung stepped back, but his body felt like someone was holding him tight. The girl began to stand up, each step she took made the surrounding air colder and colder. Dung tried to scream but his throat felt like it was being choked. Suddenly, a voice rang out in his head, "Salt. Spread salt." Dung immediately remembered the bag of salt in his pocket. With the last bit of strength he had left, he sprinkled salt on the floor. Immediately, the girl let out a piercing scream. The surrounding space shook, the door behind him opened. Without hesitation, Dung rushed out, not daring to look back. The next morning, the villagers found Dung passed out in front of the abandoned house. When he woke up, he only said one sentence, "Never go in there, something is still waiting." After returning from the abandoned house, Dung was no longer himself. He often dreamed of the girl from that day, standing in a dark corner, her lifeless eyes staring at him. Every time he woke up, cold sweat poured out, but what was even more frightening were the mysterious bruises that appeared on his body. The village elders were shocked and they saw this, saying that Dung was possessed. They advised him to go find Mrs. Nam, an old woman famous for exorcising evil spirits in the area. Mrs. Nam looked at Dung, her eyes cold. She quietly took out a bowl of water, dropped a few white petals into it, and muttered a spell. Suddenly, the water boiled, a scream echoed in the air. The room became dark, the windows shook violently. Mrs. Nam turned to Dung, her voice stern. "You have awakened a vengeful spirit. It will not leave you alone." Dung felt a shiver. He asked, "What must I do to escape it?" Mrs. Nam pondered for a moment and then said, "You must return to that house, find the thing that held that spirit. Otherwise, it will drag you along." Dung was scared but also understood that this was the only way. The next night, under the dim moonlight, he once again returned to the abandoned house, where the ghost was still waiting.